I am so excited for this episode. We're talking about how to speak and sell from stage, featuring the amazing Colin Boyd. Colin and I actually met through our mastermind, and I am just so obsessed with this topic. What he teaches is so incredibly brilliant. He is an international speaker, certified speaking professional from the National Speakers Association. So just brush the shoulder off a little bit there. And an expert in speaking and helping people communicate more persuasively from stage. So Colin, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's awesome. I'm pumped to be here.
Yay. I can't wait. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we have to start with, how did you first get into kind of this entrepreneur bubble? Because you kind of started helping people in corporate, right?
Yeah. So my background, I was in training and development. So I was working as a training and development professional in a big corporate. And one day my manager came up to me with this orange envelope, and she put it on my desk and she said, "Colin, we need to have a conversation." And I went into her room and we had a chat, and basically the whole department was being made redundant. And so within a month, I just didn't have a job. Whoa. And I'd been in that organization, that specific one, for about a year. So you can imagine the payout of redundancy for a year of work was huge. Like, I could have lived on that for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah.
It was like $200 or something.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, what am I going to do? And I remember being at a conference one time and watching a trainer come in and run like a brainstorming session. It was a session in Singapore when we were on an international event. And I remember seeing her do it and just thinking, that's what I want to do.
Wow.
And it was like this moment where I was in this job, hating what I was doing. And I was in marketing role, and watched her, and I thought, that's what I want to do. And then I said, how much did we pay her? And I think she did like a 2-hour session. They were like, I think she was $3,000. And I'm like, $3,000 for a 2-hour session? That's what I earn in a month.
Wow.
It was like crazy that my mind was blown that this was actually possible. And then from there, I started studying coaching. So I did a diploma, a certification in coaching, coaching NLP and all that sort of stuff. And then I just kind of halfway through that. And then I just thought, I'm going to start coaching. So I put myself out there and got my first coaching client, and then things just kind of escalated from there.
What was it like when you signed that first coaching client?
It was really scary.
Yeah.
And exciting, because I remember the institute that I was coaching through, they said to me, you have to charge them $125 an hour plus GST, which was the basically sales tax in Australia at the time. So obviously we're in California now, but in Australia it was like sales tax, right? And I charged him that, and I remember he did one session and then stopped. And I was like, what on earth is going on here? Like, this just wasn't working at all. And then what happened was I got a referral to a free speaking engagement. So at this time I had like 1 or 2 clients. They were kind of paying me, but not really, right?
Yeah.
And then I got a referral to a free speaking engagement, and it was for an alumni group of a university. So I turn up, and the event organizer says, Colin, we have got the biggest crowd we've ever had. We've got like 150 people. And like at the time, I'm like, 150 people, that's crazy, right? And so I turned up. It was literally a dark and stormy night down in Sydney in the rocks. I turned up with my wife in hand, and she's like holding my hand. I'm freaking out. And I go and I do the presentation. I even hired a videographer for the night because I was so like pumped for this thing.
Yeah. Free
presentation. I gave a pitch at the end, and I said, hey, if you're interested in getting coaching with me, I'm giving away 6 free coaching sessions and so forth, and put your details in the back. And out of 150 people in the audience, I got like 132 people put their business card in the back. And then I'm like, and then people were contacting me saying like, oh, you're giving away six sessions in total to each person. And I was like, no, six.
Oh my God,
like,
hell no.
one session. So the way I said it was just like, I messed it up, right? So I was like false sold the thing, what not to do. And then people contact me, they're like, we did our session. And then what happened straight after that, I think I did like 10 or 12, free coaching sessions. I just gave as many as I put away. And then from there, we signed like 8 or 9 clients.
Wow.
And they were proper clients. Like they were actually paying me fairly good money and on a continuity basis. And then 3 days later, my life has changed. What happened was I was standing on the steps of the hotel and my phone rang. And it was this executive from Hewlett Packard. And he said, Colin, I really loved your presentation that you did the other night. And I was like, oh, okay. Like the one that I kind of sold and wasn't supposed to sell that, what I told. And he's like, yeah, I thought it was really great. I'm wondering, do you have this date available? We have a training day coming up. And I check my diary. Obviously, I'm like, am I available? I'm like, oh, I've got nothing on, right?
You're like, just give me a sec and like fake thumb through something.
Just let me check.
Yeah.
We've got a bit on at the moment. So I checked my diary, nothing on. Like there is, there's tumbleweeds rolling through my diary. And I was like, yeah, I've got that available. And then he says, how much would it be to do the presentation? I'd never quoted anyone in my life before, but I remember that girl charged about $3,000 for the 2-hour session. And he asked me it was a 3-hour speech. And I said, oh, it'd be $4,000. And like, I was freaking out, right? And he instantly says, that's fine. Yeah, we can definitely do that. Like, that's easy. And I'm like, okay, this is crazy. And then I said, how many people are going to be at the event? And he said, he goes, it's a fairly big event. We're going to have about 5,000 people in the audience.
Wait, and so at this point, you had only ever spoken in front of one audience?
One audience for free.
Oh my God. Wait, when he said, oh, sure, 4,000, no problem, did the thought go through your head like, dang it, I should have asked for 10?
100%. And I could see why he said no problem. He's got like 5,000 employees in the audience. That's like less than like a cent per person, right? So he's like, this is the deal of the century.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what is this going to look like? We delivered the day, went really well. HP had been a client for like 10 years now. So, but that was when I realized the power of speaking. It completely transformed my business. And that's one of the other reasons why I'm so passionate about this subject, is because it can literally transform your business overnight from one speaking engagement.
That's so incredible. I've recently kind of gotten back on the stage, and I'm just like, there's just something about it. Being in the room with people, I think as entrepreneurs, we're always behind our computer. And then just being in the room with people, there's just so much power to that. So I would love to hear from you. Now that you are like this expert speaker, you've got so many speaking engagements under your belt, and you teach this now, what is the process or the layers or the steps of speaking? I think you have a 6-step process.
Yeah. So out of the thousands of hours that I've done, I realized that there were 6 focuses or levels that people kind of go through as they become a communicator, a persuasive speaker. Mm-hmm. And so basically when I go through these 6 levels, you'll notice that you'll at some point, or you're listening, be focusing on one certain level. And what's cool is some of the levels are like skill levels, and some of the levels are just energetic levels. Mm. And so right at the bottom level is where you focus on yourself. That's the first level, right? And so you're focused on yourself. So that is like, you're asking questions like, what will they think of me? Will I mess up? Am I credible enough? Who am I even to be on this platform? Is there someone in the audience who's smarter than me? Like all that sort of stuff, right? You know the conversation.
Yep.
Now,
and then it's like, what am I doing with my hand? Why is it?
What am I doing with my hands? Yeah. What do you do with these things? Yeah. I never knew. I didn't know what to do with things. And so the bottom level is self. And when you focus on that, how do you feel?
Oh, you're totally in your head, right? Yeah.
In your head, right? And you feel in fear. So you're completely in fear. And what happens is the impact on the audience is that they actually get concerned for you. Have you ever been sitting watching a speaker and they're like freaking out? You can tell they're really in their head, really nervous, like it's almost visible.
Oh, it's
And you
physically painful as an audience member. And I come from a professional acting background, so I know it well. I've been that person on stage that's made other people like, oh, she's not going to make it. Is she going to make it? I don't know.
yeah, it's like you feel concerned for the presenter, like the speaker, right? Or the actor. Because they feel your energy, like just unconsciously. So that's the bottom level. We've all done that. I've done that so many times. I still kind of go into that sometimes, but because I know these 6 levels, I can get myself out really quickly. And so that's like the lowest level you can ever do. The next level is what I call the intuition level. And the intuition level is where you have done some speaking, and you're getting on stage and you kind of, you're basically getting to the level where you're trusting yourself, but it's untrained intuition. What I mean by that is you've never done any sort of formal training in terms of knowing how to structure something, knowing how to articulate something. You're kind of just getting up there and just giving it a go. You know, it's the classic one where you're going into a big meeting. You're like, you know, I'm just going to get up and just say whatever comes out. Or the classic speech at like a wedding or at a 21st. And it's like, you know what? I'll have a few cups of courage and I'll say what
and wing it,
whatever, or I'll just wing it. Wing it. So that's the intuition level. Now the impact of that is confusion. So you'll feel, it's like this weird sense of confidence, but you get up there and about 2 minutes into it, you're confused and the audience is a little bit confused. You're telling random stories that make no sense and all that sort of stuff. And because this is untrained, you had no training in structure at all, right? It's just winging it. And the impact on the audience, the effect on the audience is indecision. You're not going to get consistency in sales. You're not going to get consistency in just decision from your audience because you're not following a framework or some sort of structure. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. And I think a lot of people that I work with, they struggle with this with their live videos, that they go on and they just talk and then they're not getting sales and not seeing things change in their business. So that really puts a word to it and gives a lot of clarity.
Yeah, it's untrained intuition. Now and you always see the freaks, like sometimes there's a freak who he's never been trained and they say they have never been trained and they just like crush it, right? But they're like the 0.1%. For the rest of the, you know, like everyone else, including me, we do need some structure. And that is actually the third level. The third level is the structure level.
Yeah.
And so that's where you know, similar to what you teach and what I teach, it's like you give some structure to what they're doing. You know, even if you're teaching business, like you give some structure and what that creates, as soon as you've got structure, you get clarity. And so you know what you're saying, you know when you're saying it, and it may not go exactly like how you wanted it to, and that's fine. What it's about is having clarity in your mind that will help you to communicate clearly. And what happens is when you get structure, the audience, they go, this is making sense to me on like a logical level as well. And that gives you credibility. And so does that make sense? Because they're like, this is making sense. Yeah, it's like they're following some sort of structure. There's a framework and this is making sense. Obviously, you input your own personality in that framework, but this creates credibility, consistency, and so forth. So structure. So that is the first level that really you get the learning from. And, you know, if you do any course with me, that's, I mean, I know for me, like that's the first thing I'll teach you, some structure, some basic structure of something, right? Which is what we're teaching now, it's structure. The fourth level is when you're focused on skill. And so this is the craft of communication. This is where you learn to tell stories, like what you mentioned that you were teaching the other day on your podcast. This is when you learn to share metaphors, when you learn to use persuasive language, how to use pausing. It's like, it's the craft, it's the beauty, the art of speaking and presenting. And what happens there is when you not only have structure, but you have like a craft that you can deliver in a confident way, you feel confident. So you're like, I know what I'm doing now. I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing. And the impact of that is engagement. if you know how to ask a killer question, if you know how to lean forward, engage your audience, if you know how to tell a great story, all that sort of stuff, you're going to get high engagement. Does this make sense?
Oh, this is so good. And it makes total sense, right? Like we all have experienced that, especially even more so now with live video. I think you do kind of get a glimpse into like, oh, I can think of a time where that happened for me, or I was able to tap into that a little bit more. But I appreciate too that you call it a craft. Obviously coming from the artistry background of being an actor and a performer, musical theater, you know, that's what it is. And it's something that really does require that time to really develop that mastery. And I don't necessarily see that so much in other areas of entrepreneurship or people framing it in that way. So I love that you're sharing this message.
Yeah, because it's like a performing.
Yeah.
It's like an acting. There's a level of performance. Do you know what it is? It's you 2.0. And so it's not being someone else, it's being who you are, but it's bringing the excellence. It's the 2.0 version of you. Because that's what people are inspired by. So that's the fourth level. The fifth level is when your focus is on others. And this is where things really start to shift. And so this is not necessarily like the skill as it is more the focus and the energy. And so your focus is on others. When your focus is on others, you start heading into your lives, into your presentations, not asking, what do I want to say? Asking, how do they want to hear it? What do they need? What are their hot buttons? What are their challenges? What are their desires? What are their aspirations? Like you actually start asking this question. And so this changes the game because all of a sudden your live, your presentation, your speech becomes not about you, it becomes about them. And when it becomes about them, everything changes. And so the feeling you're going to get when you make it about them is compassion. So you have this sense of like, I actually want to help and serve them.
Yeah.
And what happens is when you feel compassion, your audience feels connection.
That's good.
Is that making sense? Right?
Oh, that's great. This is, yeah.
Because it's like, this person gets me. It's like, they're not just doing this rendition of this presentation. They've actually crafted it for me. So that's the fifth level. And the sixth level, the highest level that you can ever get to is when your focus is on purpose. And purpose is when you have a mission, a conviction, you have something that is bigger than even your audience and it's bigger than you. And it's where you tap into like a higher energetic level where you literally vibrate for creating something so much bigger than even you or your audience. And so when you tap into passion, purpose, what you feel is conviction. And then the impact of that is conversion. Is that because people, they jump into the vision of what you're talking about. And so you move through these 6 levels of understanding how to structure it well, how to craft it well, focusing on others, and then fully tapping into a conviction. And then you get conversion.
Boom. I'm so glad that you are bringing up that it's really connecting to the bigger purpose. Similar, when I was doing my actor training, professional actor training, we talked about very, very similar types of structure where it was like you have different things at the lower levels, then maybe you're connecting to like the prop, the place, then you're connecting to the people, and then the highest level is to connect to the idea. Like, what is the idea that the playwright, what are you trying to communicate? So I love this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about all that. Like, okay.
That is so true. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Have you ever read Khalil Gibran? Is it him? No. Yeah, The Prophet.
I haven't. I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
Okay,
no.
so it's like a series of epic like poems, but it's all about like different ideas. So it's like love and this and that, like marriage. So I don't know. I remember that was one of the things that it's
The Prophet.
The Prophet. It's a good one for anyone listening. Highly recommend it. Yeah.
So
So I'm like loving all of this. So for you, what processes did you have to go through in order to move through those levels?
Yeah. So I think for me, it was like learning how to actually speak. That was a big one. So I attended, I've spent a lot of money on my own education, probably similar to you, and gone to a lot of workshops, a lot of training, bought a lot of online courses. And so for me, that was learning the structure and the craft piece, those middle levels. I would say the being in business, being in marketing, knowing how to serve a customer, that's where I've learned the higher levels, which is the purpose and the focusing on others. And so, I think I've also had a lot of experiences where I've noticed that being in my own head and being in my own way has been the biggest, impact in a negative way on my own speaking and presenting. I know for me, I've stood in front of audiences and especially when I was younger, and like my legs would literally shake. I remember one time I had to grab my hand, I had the microphone in one hand. I had to grab it with the other hand to stop it shaking because it was shaking so much.
Yeah.
Right. When I was doing the presentation, I remember I was in year 6 at school, and I was at a Catholic boys' school, and I had my high socks on and my little blue cub hat on.
Got a very clear visual now.
Yeah. We were in religion class, and we were reading some passages from the Bible, and each student was going along reading them. And I remember it got to me, and I read the passage, and I really stumbled with the passage. Like I couldn't read the words properly, and it was almost like my whole world shrunk. I can vividly remember I was sitting in the classroom at a little wood desk with the ones where you lift up like that,
Yeah.
and I read it, and I remember everyone. I remember thinking, wow, everyone must think I'm an idiot. Everyone must think I can't read. I'm an idiot. I can't speak. I can't communicate. And if I'm really honest, that experience, the emotional anchor that experience created, went with me for probably till I was about 22, 23 years old when I really dealt with it.
Wow.
And I remember every time I would go to speak, I would have that physiological response to when I was back in grade 6, reading the Bible in religion class. And that was I created this belief that I was an idiot, that I didn't know how to communicate, that I couldn't read properly and all that sort of stuff. And so one of the processes I've had to go through that I really obsessed about and teach a lot is that mindset shift of reframing your beliefs, creating empowering beliefs, revisiting some old stuff, which is it's very neurolinguistic programming, like
I was just
looking
going
at
to say, this is, I was like anchoring, reframing, and really what you just said, going back to when people are saying, oh, I'm not a good speaker, I'm afraid to speak. It's like, when did you decide that? And you pinpointed exactly that, because what you're saying to the T, when we don't deal with those things and then we go to speak on stage, it's like your subconscious mind is like, now's a good time. Let's deal with this now. You want to
in front of 100 people. Now is the time.
Now might be the time to deal with this. Yeah. Oh my God. Too freaking funny.
So
for you, how did you begin to shift that? I mean, was it through using like NLP techniques and kind of reframing your limiting decisions that you made in those moments, or what did that look like?
NLP was a big one. I remember I did a particular process. I can't remember what it was called. It was like a cross anchor process where they basically
collapse anchor.
Collapsed anchor, yes. Yeah. So they wired one and then did the other one and then collapsed it. And honestly, it changed my life.
Wow.
That experience. And that was kind of tied to it was almost like this ribbon that ran through my past of all these different events. It was almost like it collapsed multiple experiences that was linked to this feeling that really started back then. And then from there, I remember writing out what I wanted to believe about myself, that I'm a world-class communicator. I'm a transformational coach. And I used to say this stuff to myself every single day, whether I didn't think I really was at the time, but I used to say it to myself.
Yeah.
And after a period of time, I started to notice, I'm a world-class speaker. I'm a transformational coach. I started to gather more evidence for it. And then that belief started being, made more strongly and so forth. And so that, I would say that process has been huge, like getting coached. And then also just one process that I like to do is I'll get people to write down all the beliefs that they have about themselves right now. So it's kind of just a vomit of what they're telling themselves about themselves unfiltered. And then look at, does that empower them? Is that if they were to tell themselves that, would that set them up well to get on stage and be the best version of themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And, 99% of the time, it's like, not at all. It's like, I freak out when I speak in front of people. I can't read because I'm an idiot. All this sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you made that up. At some point, you created a meaning from an experience, which created an emotion and had continued that on, and a filter. But you created that, you made that up. And that was the experience that I had. I was like, I made up the meaning that I was an idiot. I wasn't an idiot. I was just 13 years old. And I just had an experience where I fumbled on a few words, and it's okay, forgiving myself for that. And so, and then rewriting what the beliefs are that are going to serve, support you moving forward into the future.
So good.
And rehearsing.
And there's going to be so many people listening to this going, oh my gosh, I had an almost identical experience as a kid. And it is true, right? That like public speaking or speaking in front of people is like the number one fear that people have.
Yeah. It's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking like it's, they say like, oh, imagine the audience naked. Don't about the audience, you were naked on stage.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the truth. You feel like you're naked. And it's very vulnerable. And that's why when you make that shift from those 6 levels of like the bottom level focused on yourself to being focused on others and then ultimately serving a greater purpose, all of a sudden, no one's naked. Everyone's fully clothed. Everyone's in conversation and connection. It becomes a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big frames that I love to teach people as well, is that a presentation isn't a presentation. It's a conversation that you're having, just like you would if we were to hang out and have a wine or something like that at the next mastermind. And how would we chat? How would it feel? That's how I want it to feel when I'm presenting. I kind of, when I'm on stage, I'll go the next level. I may not be as intense, but sometimes I can get a bit intense. But I may not get as intense, but I go a bit next level when I'm on stage. But it should feel like I'm just having a conversation with a good friend.
Absolutely. So if you're on stage and you get into that self-conscious moment where you fall back to level 1, maybe you fumble on something, you get triggered by somebody in the audience yawning or whatever happens, what do you tell yourself, or how do you shift yourself back into like being present in the moment and moving back up to, connecting to the purpose, the passion, the mission, the idea?
Yeah. So there's a few things. First of all, breathing is a big one.
Yeah.
So I'll just stop and take a deep breath. So through my nose, deep breath, and just breathe out. I just focus on my breath just for a second, just take a minute, because 5 seconds on stage feels like 50 minutes. When you're in that state, when you're in flow state, 50 minutes feels like 5 minutes on stage. It's like opposites. But when you're focused on yourself and your whole world is shrinking in on you, I'll stop. I'll just breathe for a minute. One thing I'll sometimes do is I'll shift the energy to the audience. And so I will get them to discuss a question or to do something that will take the focus off me and get it onto the audience. So one thing I'll say right at the start that I do almost every presentation, even like big corporate audiences, entrepreneurial, I'll come in and I'll say hello. And I'll say, hey, can you turn to the person next to you? Turn to the person next to you, look him in the eye and say, you're looking good today. And then people just laugh, and then I'll play on it and so forth. But what I'm doing is I'm shifting energy off me and I'm shifting it to the audience, and then they lift, and then all of a sudden you feel more present, more connected, and so forth. Another one is I just remind myself of the purpose, realizing that imagine when these people go back, and you have to be clear on this coming in as well. When these people go back to work, into their businesses, into their jobs, whatever your audience is, when they go back, what impact could this message have on their life? When they're sitting down, they're talking with their daughter, they're talking with their son, with their husband or wife, and they're talking about the change or the ideas that this has had on their life. What would impact would that have? How would that feel? And as soon as you start focusing beyond, it's like almost 2 levels beyond. It's not just about them. It's about the purpose, the impact of that. then you start going, wow, this is worthwhile being up here. And your focus shifts and you start feeling more confident. You feel the conviction again.
That's so good. That's so important. Because again, people get so uncomfortable on stage, but if you can just, first of all, breathe, because people forget to breathe. And I think that just creates even more of that vacuum, and just really looking at the bigger picture. So I love that tip for engagement too. Do you have any other, because I'm like, as a female, like, would that work? Would I be able to pull that off? Like, I don't know if that's like, like some people are like, oh my God, I could never say that to an audience. Like, hey, look at the person next to you and tell them they're good looking. Like, so like when you're training people, is that something that you usually recommend, to have them like kind of do a little icebreaker?
You got to kind of find your own. I mean, that's one of my signature ones that I do. I just made it up one day, and it just worked. And so you do have to find your own signature ones, but you can literally, so like really simple one that's like super safe, because there's like safe and then there's like risky, right? Mm-hmm. So like risky is everyone get up and dance around like a jellyfish. And if you ever do that right at the start, people are like, oh gosh, like this is ridiculous, but you could get there if you've warmed them up. If you've warmed them up for half an hour or an hour, you could get them up, dance around like a jellyfish, and it could be awesome. But right at the start, people are like, nah, maybe not.
Yeah.
Right. And so you want to go you want to find your range, super safe. Just turn to the person next to you, shake their hand and say, I'm glad I'm sitting next to you today.
Oh, that's sweet.
Just something sweet like that, right? Just really nice. And like, people love it. Like they'll go, I'm so glad I'm sitting next to you. Right. And then, I mean, you can play on it, and then you can go, now turn to the other person who you're not glad to sitting next to and shake their hand as well, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like everyone turns to like the person they feel safe with.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That is funny. They go to the person that they're friends with already.
Yeah, turn to the other person who you're not as glad to sit next to and shake their hand. But that's a safe one. Or you can, some other good ones is you can just, so one rule is the audience never responds the first time. You always have to ask twice. And so one of my signature things that I do, I'll come on stage and I'll stand at the front of the stage and I'll just literally say hello. And it's kind of odd because it feels like we're just, at a bar having a conversation. Yeah. It's like, hello. And I'll say hello. And people sit there and they look at me. It's like, is this guy serious? Is he actually saying just hello to us? And I'll say, hello. And then the whole audience, on the second time only, the whole audience will go, hello.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden I've won them over instantly.
That's fascinating.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, you build that rapport with them. Yep. And now you've almost, in the first 10 seconds of whatever you're going to do, you've shown them how they are supposed to show up and respond to you.
Correct.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I'm not letting them off. So as soon as you let the audience off the hook, you're gone, especially in sales. If the audience starts not responding, I mean, you watch like a Tony Robbins say, he's got everyone saying, I about everything. And so you look at like the top sales people, they will not let the audience off the hook. So the goal is to slowly ramp them. So right at the start, really non-threatening, turn to the person next to you, shake the hand, say, I'm so glad I'm sitting next to you. Right?
Yeah.
And you don't let anyone off the hook, and you say, come on, turn to the person next to you because it's always the second time, because everyone's going to go,
you want me to do what?
Like, what? Yeah, totally. And then you push them and then they'll do it. And so you never let them off the hook. If you let them off the hook that first time, you've lost your whole speech. You've lost your whole sale. You've lost 50% of your sales.
This is so good. And this is really, you're priming the audience to respond, to say yes, to say I, whatever it may be. How does, like you're saying, this will have you lose 50% of your sales. Can you give us a little like behind the scenes psychology of why that is, or like how that happens?
Well, it's exactly what you said. You're teaching them how to respond to you. Mm-hmm. And so basically you're priming them to to engage with you in the decision, because one of the biggest problems is not people saying no, it's that they actually don't even make a decision. It's not like no or yes, it's they don't make a decision. And so I'm not saying people should buy it if, you know, everyone should buy it no matter what. Like, that's not what sales is about. It's got to be the right fit for the right person. But if you lose them engaging with you, they become a side person. They don't even make a decision.
Yeah.
And so the goal of any sales presentation, whether it be a webinar or a speech, is decision. And so you're getting them to respond and to make decisions, little decisions of, yeah, I'm going to go along with this person and engage with them through the whole process. And if you lose them halfway, it's going to impact your sales in the end significantly.
Is there a way to save a presentation, a webinar, a live video, if you realize that you are bombing so hard halfway through?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
So one of the biggest things is that people will try to just talk more. They'll talk faster and they'll talk more. Okay, I just need to talk more because they're feeling uncomfortable. They're feeling like they're bombing. You know, they're not engaging. I will usually get someone to stop and do like a question, or I love in webinars, I love polls. I think I posted that in our mastermind group the other day. A poll, right? So you'll say, and you have to set these up prior a lot of the time, like if you're using Zoom. So I'll set up like a poll and I'll say, you know, rate yourself out of 5 with how confident you feel in this area. And I'll keep pushing people to do like a rating. So like a little engagement piece will get people back on track. So you really can bring them back. But if you can plan out the questions and the little asks along the way, and because you're ramping up to a big ask at the end to buy my program, to buy my product, to buy my service, right? That's the big ask. So you have to get them to have little friendly asks. On a webinar, click the hands up to give me a clap to start off the presentation, right? Everyone just click it like mad, click the hands up. Imagine you giving me a clap. I need some encouragement, right? And so just even that, if they're not clicking it, they're basically saying, yeah, I'm not engaged yet. And you can absolutely win them back. But at some point it's like you slowly ramp it up.
Mm-hmm. And when you finally ramp up to asking for that big offer, whether it's a coaching program or a future live event, whatever it may be, what are, I guess, some of the biggest mistakes aside from the ones we've already discussed? And like, is there a certain formula that you use? And I'm not asking you to give it all away because this is like exclusive stuff, but like, what's like maybe like 1 or 2 things that you're like, oh, these are the important key pieces?
Yeah. I think, so one of the biggest things is really getting clear on your transformational story. And so you might tell that at the start and then also refer to it at the end. And so the transformational story is the whole purpose of your story is to transfer the transformational belief that you went through to get into the program, the product that you're selling, or to start it. Because usually if you're selling something, if you're an MLM or you're selling, Beachbody or something like that, you probably joined it for some reason, not just to make money, but you probably wanted to change your life, or you loved the product or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to discover what was the belief, the transformational moment that you went through that got you to decide, I want to be in this thing. And you've got to tell that story in such a way that when you tell it, they go, wow, I really not only understand that process, but I feel similar. I feel like I'm at a point that they were at just before they made their decision to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're actually transferring a belief from you to them, the belief that it is possible, that it's a transformational, program for them, or whatever it is, whatever you're selling. And so for me, if I'm selling speaking, I could tell the story of the free speaking engagement, which led to the HP. And so if you're a coach, you're like going, wow, I would like to do a speech like that gets me into major corporations or major clients or whatever. Like, I want a speech like that, right?
Yep.
And so I'm telling that story, and what I'm doing is I'm transferring the transformational moment. And so you've got to work out what your transformational moment is. Some people call it your origin story, or your
Like
epiphany story. Orange.
Your orange story.
So that
Yeah.
that is a big one. Another huge one is really going deep in terms of the gap. So the gap from where this program, or the value that this program can take them, and then where they are right now. That's a huge one, creating that gap. And then also I love asking the question of what's it going to cost them if they don't make a decision, if they don't move forward 12 months from now, what could this cost them? If they were to do the program, and see some great results, think about the results, but if they don't do that, what could it cost them? So it's basically going to cost them that. And so then they start seeing the cost of the program compared to the value, or what it could potentially cost them. And so, I think telling the right story, your origin transformational story, and then just extreme value gap. So like where they are and where they kind of want to be.
What is the last call to action that you would give to somebody? Like, okay, like sign up, or do you say like, oh, come meet me in the back? Or what is your like last couple of phrases that you use to just kind of close it with a bang, or maybe keep it open so that they're still kind of have that curiosity?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. If it's the classic sell from stage, it's the I look forward to seeing you up the back, and you literally you step off the stage and you just walk straight past everyone, you walk up the back, and you hope people follow. That's like the classic one. But I really, to be honest, a lot of the time when I'm selling on stage, especially in like a workshop or something like that, I will sometimes actually ask people to leave if they don't want to hear about the program. Remember how we talked about the decision thing? So what I'll say to them, I'll be running like a full day workshop, and I'll say, hey, we're going to break early for afternoon tea. We're going to break about 20 minutes early, because I'm going to talk about the next program that will help you to go to the next level in what we're talking about. If you're not interested, that's totally fine. You can go out and grab some food. But if you are interested in going to the next level in what we're talking about, then I want you to hang around. We'll provide some food and we'll have a discussion about it. And what's cool about that is the people who come back and stay, even though it's usually probably 70% of people will stay, they're making their first decision of, I'm in. It's the first decision. And then you take them through the process. And it's also not awkward at all, because it's like they have come to get pitched to.
Right. Like they've given you that permission to tell them more. So good.
Basically, they said, I'm sitting here, sell me your program. Like, they've literally said that to you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's so good.
No awkward. There's no awkwardness now.
Yeah.
Then.
And that is so powerful, because I've been to events where I would have maybe kind of sort of invested in something. And this was like, I'm thinking specifically of something that was more intimate, and I wasn't given that option. And we were kind of fidgeting in our seats going, well, like we want to go get food, we want to go to lunch. But just thinking about it, had this individual simply said, if this isn't, because nobody wants to be the person to get up and say, I don't want to improve my life. I don't want to take things to the next level. So now they've got like the social pressure, social proof of everyone sitting around. And you're kind of like, I guess it's a double bind where you're like, if you want to stay, it means you're interested. So like, boom, boom, boom. Oh my God.
Yeah. If then, love that.
And do you use this on webinars as well?
Not as much. On webinars, I'll do a transition. I'll still say, I'll do the transition from, so I'll prime them at the start. I'll tell them that they'll have a chance to do to get some more help from me at the end, that I'm going to give them as much value as I can in the hour that we've got. But then I'll do the transition, and I'll say, something along the lines of, I don't know why you're here. Maybe you're here because you're frustrated with this, or you've got a challenge with that, blah, blah, blah. But what I do know is that if you see a change in this, there will be a huge impact. And so I want to share with you, like I said, this is the way you can get some more help if you want to hang around. And then I'll go through my solution. And then you go through the process, however you want to go through with unpacking your program, from sharing testimonials to sharing the impact of it, sharing the value, the modules, all that sort of stuff. And then fast acting bonuses. Love fast acting bonuses, by the way. Wow. They have changed my life. Love them. If you're not doing fast acting bonuses and you're listening to this, you've got to try it.
Because they need that urgency.
Yeah. I've seen when I do webinars, I used to have 50% of my sales on the last day and like 20% on the first day, and then 30% throughout the week or however long it's open. Mm-hmm. Now I'm seeing like 60% of my sales on the webinar. Whoa. And then 40%, kind of like 20% throughout, and then like an extra 20% on the last day. So you don't get the big spike, but what's great is you get that certainty of like, this rocked right up front. And it's always nice, that encouragement that like people are connecting with it. But the fast acting bonuses are game changing.
So for somebody who's like, well, what is that? Like, what would that look like? What's an example of maybe something? Because it can be simple, right? It doesn't have to be like a whole second program.
Yeah. So fast acting bonus, could be so simple. I try to do fast acting bonuses that I don't have to do anything for.
Mm-hmm. Not adding an additional coaching call or.
Correct. Now you can do that. And that's probably the easiest thing in terms of like, if you haven't got extra content that you can create. But I'll give an example. One fast acting bonus for one of my presentation skills programs that I sell, I'll do a fast acting bonus and they'll get the recording of a deep dive into the exact process I go through in preparing for a big keynote speech. And this was an advanced training that I did with a group a little while back. And they get the exact process that I go through complimentary. And people paid $300 to just attend that particular training.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just a recording.
And like reusing things that you've already created.
Correct. Another one I do, one of my old products, it was on Productivity Academy. It was a recording of a day's workshop. And so I just recorded it and people paid $500 for the workshop. And I say, you just get the recording for free. So people paid $500 for it, you get it for free. If you join in 24 hours or right here on the webinar.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the numbers don't lie. Like you saw the spike because they're like, well, and it encourages people to make that decision now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, so good.
And with your webinars, some little secret sauce as well with your webinars is, like I said before, you want people to be making decisions the whole way through. And so there should be at least 3 decisions that they're making before they make the final decision. And so what I mean by 3 decisions is you have little points in the webinar where you stop and you dig deep into the impact or the pain or the desires that they have around the piece of content that you've just delivered. So you stop teaching and you go, what impact would this have 3 months from now if you were to implement this? And you get people to type it in and so forth. And then you say, well, today's about decisions. Today's about you making a decision to start heading towards that, to start working towards that. Who here is willing to say, yeah, I want to make a decision to start working towards something like that right now? And people put up their hands and they're just showing that, yeah, I want to make a decision to work towards that, right? But on a webinar, you're selling the what, you're not selling the how. So then you get to the end and you say, well, let me show you how to actually do that.
Right.
Because you're building desire. That's really what you're building on the webinar, desire and pain.
Brilliant. And would you say that's pretty similar to the presentations that you do, or do you tend to focus a little bit more on some step-by-step how-to content when you're doing your speeches?
No, it's still very conceptual.
Okay.
Very conceptual. When it depends on what type of presentation it is. Mm-hmm. So the classic presentation where I'm not selling, I have a different structure or a
Gotcha.
different thinking to a sales presentation. Yeah. When I'm like the classic structure that I'm thinking about when I'm presenting is I want to touch people's hearts right from the start. So I'll tell a really cool story, metaphor, like touch their hearts, right? Then I want to shift their minds. So I'll teach them some really cool concepts that challenge their thinking. So I'll shift their minds, and then I want to equip their hands. And so I want to give them some really cool tools that you can use, practical advice. And then I want to move their feet. And that is when I get them to take action. And so they're the 4 things that I'll do. That is a teaching presentation, where if they're a part of your group coaching program, that's kind of what they're going to experience. They'll experience motivation for the topic. They'll get shifted in their thinking. You'll give them some really practical tools, and then you'll make a commitment of, hey, what are we going to be accountable for? Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is so brilliant. I love all of this stuff, and thank you, because I'm learning right now from you. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh, I get this in. So we're gonna have to chat some more, but I do want to respect your time. Is there any other last little nuggets of wisdom that you want to share?
I think the big thing is that presentations are the number one way to make an impact in the world. You look at any big movement that ever was. It all comes down to presentations, whether it be like Martin Luther King. You know, what do you remember him for? I Have a Dream speech. You know, you look at, you know, I don't care what political view you have, but you look at like Barack Obama's Yes We Can. You remember the Yes We Can speech, right? You look at Jesus and his teachings. You look at, you know, Gandhi. All of them were speakers. They were communicators. And they knew that the number one way to see a shift in their community, to see a shift in their world, was to learn how to communicate persuasively. And so I just want to encourage you, however that is for you, is to, if you want to make a big impact, is to learn how to leverage this gift that you have to communicate, whether it be on Facebook Lives, on live stages, on webinars. It's the number one way to see change in people's lives.
Amen to that. And I think with Facebook Live, people are starting to really get that and get more comfortable with being uncomfortable and just owning their message. Like, all right, this doesn't feel great, but I'm going to do it anyway. Where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you online?
So just my website, so colinboyd.co, and it's with one L, C-O-L. I mean, you can put the link on there. Everyone spells double L in the US. I've
really
moved to the US. Yeah, everyone's Colin, C-O-double-L, and I'm one L. So don't go to .com, because there's a country singer there and he will not give me the .com. If you want to go to country music, colinboyd.com, you can check him out. But if you want to learn how to communicate more persuasively, you can check me out. And there's some just all free. There's some free like content there, downloads. There's some persuasive templates there and so forth that you can just grab for free if anyone's interested.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing so abundantly. This was,
I've had so much fun.
This was so great.
This has been really good. Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Jen.
You're so welcome. All right, guys, if you loved this, make sure you head over to Colin's social media platforms and just show him some love and tell him some of your big ahas. Share with him how much this meant to you.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Colin, thank you for being here, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Jen.
Bye.